Today on Locked On Women's Basketball, I'm joined by Noah Dalzell to talk about all of the WNBA awards and who our picks are for each one. So stay tuned. This is Locked On Women's Basketball.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to this Thursday episode of Locked On Women's Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. My name is Chelsea Leite, and I thought we would have a fun discussion today about WNBA awards. We're getting to that time of the year where that's all people are talking about is MVP, Rookie of the Year, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought the perfect person to bring on to talk to that would be my colleague at SB Nation, Noah Dalzell, who writes about the WNBA for SB Nation, but also writes about the Celtics for lots of other sites as well. So lovely, coworker to have, but also someone who actually has a vote. So that is lots of context. But thanks for joining me today, Noah. What's your thoughts on all of these discussions going on? Do you think people need to chill out about a bit?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to have a vote. This is my first year having one. And when the league first asked me, I was like, oh, this is so fun. Like, I get to actually, do something with my opinion. And then honestly, as the year has gone along, I was like, I don't know if I want to have a vote because it almost feels like when I didn't have one, and I don't have one for the NBA, and I covered the NBA as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, it seems like it's really obvious. And I'm like, oh, how are somebody voting for that player? Like, I'll look at because the NBA publishes the votes in total. And so you can see exactly what everybody's ballot looks like. And I always judge the ballot so much. Now that I have a vote, I'm like, yeah, it's just tough decisions. And I think what I realized is that a lot of it is groupthink. A lot of it is like, this is the name that's really popular to say right now. And so even if there's a strong case for somebody else, it's like nobody wants to be the one to kind of stray away from the public and from the kind of common opinion. So I have a lot of thoughts about the politics of like award voting. And obviously the WNBA doesn't make voters share their ballots. I'm going to share my ballot because I think I may as well. Like, people can be mad about it, but at the end of the day, I'm a media member. I feel like I should talk about it and share it with the fans and everything. But it certainly is like an interesting phenomenon of how kind of like narratives inform awards as well as stats and like the eye test. Like, it's almost like a bunch of different things going on at once.
Yeah, I mean, we will talk about our, thoughts on each award as the episode goes on, but I thought it was interesting to have each of us kind of share our things because I don't have a vote and you do have a vote. And I think, like you said, like I very much get like couch quarterback things where I'm like, oh, like this should be so easy, like in past years. And then as I've kind of thought about it and covered the league a lot more this season, I thought like it's hard. And I think especially because we're in this situation where a lot of people expect you to publicize your votes, which I think has its pros and cons. There's so much pressure to make a vote that one, like, you're going to be happy with as the person like putting your name out there, but also like, there's the fans context. You have the players who are very involved and will likely see who you vote for. You have all of this narrative going on. It's a smaller community to keep in mind. And so there's so many factors, and you're right. It's hard, like, especially as A'ja Wilson has kind of like come up, and we'll talk about MVP a little bit later, but like, I'm sitting here like, I'm kind of glad I don't have one right now because it would be so hard to make these decisions. But, what are your thoughts? I mean, a few years ago, we had a situation where A'ja Wilson lost out on MVP because she got like a 4th place vote. And so there's been all this discussion. I'm pretty sure A'ja has come forward and said she knows who it was who gave her the 4th place vote. But players get involved, and that's a big thing. But yeah, you kind of mentioned it a bit about like why not publicize, but what do you think are the pros and cons specifically of like these media members saying, hey, here's who I voted for?
Yeah, on one hand, I think if you have a vote, which I believe there's 100 media members that have a vote, so it's not a lot of people, and I think it's a privilege, and you should be able to take the heat a little bit. And if it's controversial or if certain fan bases are going to be mad at you, like, so be it. Like, it's part of the job. So that's, I think, my argument in favor of media members sharing is that it's kind of like you signed up for this, and the same way that people say that about players and you signed up for this, so don't be upset when your privacy is impeded upon, all that. I think media members that want to have a media vote, because you can say no, like the league asks, and you could say I don't want to vote, and then not have to deal with it. Like I think then to then go out and say I don't want to share my vote feels like, okay, then you kind of can't handle the full package of this. On the flip side, a lot of what ends up happening, I think, is that some players just have much larger fan bases, like Caitlin Clark, massive fan base, Paige Becker's massive fan base. And I see this all the time where certain reporters get branded by that fan base as like, she hates Caitlin Clark, she hates Paige Becker's, she hates like it. And it's usually like, I'll be like, where did they get this narrative from? And it's like one article that person wrote that they didn't like one paragraph of the article, or some vote they had 3 years ago, or something they said on a podcast. And a lot of times it kind of gets taken out of context, or it kind of gets blown up. And so I understand that some media members might say, hey, if I don't want to include, Paige, if I want to vote for Sonia Citron for Rookie of the Year, and Paige Becker's might end up getting all but 2 votes, right? The Paige's fans are going to go after the 2 people that don't vote for Paige. And you don't want them to not vote for Sonia just because they don't want to take the heat from the Paige fans. You know what I mean? And so, because then it becomes like you're just voting for whoever you think is going to cause the least amount of stress. And, if you think there's a basketball case to be made for Sonia, you should make that case. And so I understand why those although, if you're making like a more unpopular vote, or a vote that's going to upset a massive fan base, of which there are now many in the league that I think have a real fan base behind an individual player, then if anonymity is going to help you make the vote that you believe in, then I think you should do that.
Yeah. I mean, I think you were talking a little bit about like groupthink and stuff like that. And it's hard. We're getting to a point of the season where there's been a lot of narratives. It's a long season in comparison to past WNBA seasons. You think about how people have been thinking, oh, like Napheesa Collier, MVP, lock. And people were saying that in like July, and now Asia Wilson is coming up. When you were thinking about your votes, do you kind of try and contextualize the whole year? Do you take that groupthink into consideration, or do you just really sit down for like a day and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go through this and this and this, and these are my factors?
Yeah, I try, first of all, to not pay attention too much to like the Twitter discourse, because I think sometimes, and I've made this mistake as well, like I think sometimes Twitter feels like the entire world, and like it perfectly represents like the temperature of how basketball fans feel. And in reality, like it represents how the very online basketball fans feel that are on Twitter. Like it doesn't mean that that's how the average fan feels. So I try to, first of all, kind of remove myself as much as I can from those conversations. And that's why sometimes I'll tweet out like, who would you vote for 6th man of the year, or 6th woman of the year, or, most improved, because I don't follow what people are saying online. And I will just look through my tweet and just read that and kind of not have it be as cluttered. But in my opinion, I think the best way to do it is to hold off on trying to form your ballot like halfway through the season, because if you do that, then you're going to watch every game with the lens of like, okay, I have Napheesa for MVP. I have, and if anything crazy happens, then maybe I'll reconsider. But in reality, there's no reason to do it like a month in advance. Like if you sit down at the end of the year and say, hey, like where in totality, what happened here? And like, look at the stats, watch the games. I keep notes throughout the season when I watch a game of just like various things that I notice that are maybe not going to appear statistically, because at the end of the day, like efficiency, assists, rebounds, points, plus minus, all that stuff's really easy to find, but it's the other stuff that might be a little bit harder. So I keep track of that stuff. And then at the end of the season, like when ballots are due, then I'm going to like look through the full season stats as well and kind of use that as judgment. But it's hard, you're tempted to want to like ask around and want to ask like other media members, like, who are you voting for? I had a media ballot with Unrivaled, and that was like kind of stressful because did you have a media ballot for Unrivaled?
Yeah, we had one through the next. So like I participated in that. Yeah.
So that was like my first time voting on something, and I was really excited because I loved Unrivaled and I watched like every single game. But then when it came to be, I was like, what is everybody else saying? Because it just feels like, I might have my ballot could be totally out there and like not aligned, because Unrivaled was different. There's like less discourse around it, right? Than the WNBA. And so I think that was good practice for me, but as much as I can not ask other reporters who they're voting for and just try to form my own opinions and not read what ESPN's panel has to say and not, try not to do that, because at the end of the day, I think a couple people will write these mainstream articles and then everybody else kind of like uses that as a baseline of like, okay, I don't want to go too crazy away from this, but we all should do what we think, right? And then maybe we'll have people that have been historically underrepresented and undervoted for would get their fair share.
Yeah, that's totally. And I feel like that's all important context to have as we head into this conversation. So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're actually going to go through each of the big WNBA end of season awards and just kind of give our thoughts on where we stand right now as to who we think might win. So stay tuned. This is Locked On Women's Basketball. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money, and an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever having to touch a spreadsheet. For me, doing my finances as a freelance writer is not ideal. And so having something like Monarch Money that really budgets, but also kind of shows where I'm at financially right now in the future is really helpful. And so it also allows you to track your subscriptions and all of that and categorize things. And as someone who doesn't like spreadsheets, I'm a words person, not a numbers person. It's definitely very easy to use and convenient. So don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use Locked On NBA at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with the code Locked On NBA. All right, this is Locked On Women's Basketball. I am back with Noah Dalzell. I am Chelsea Leite, and we are talking all about WNBA end of season awards. We're getting to that time of the year where votes are going to start happening, and it's basically all the conversation right now is who is this, who is that. So we're going to start with 3 of the 6 major awards in this segment, and then we'll move on to the last 3 in the next segment. And so I have Noah here to talk about all of that. Noah has a vote. I don't have a vote. And so that's kind of like our fun little dynamic here as we talk about these awards. So let's start with
you can influence my votes, Chelsea. I don't want to have all the burden on me.
I'll definitely, the one that I would influence is Rookie of the Year. And I feel like that one's kind of locked in a little bit. But I mean, I did put the big 3 in my notes just so we can talk about the context. But for Rookie of the Year, it's really coming down to Paige Beckers, and then like in tier 2, Sonia Citron and Kiki Iriafen, who obviously will make the all-rookie team. But I think especially off the heels of a 44-point Paige Beckers game last night in Los Angeles, I think that's important context to have. Paige Beckers has the Rookie of the Month awards for June and July. She didn't get May because she was out with a concussion for some of that. And so Kiki Iriafen, who has had a fantastic season regardless, it's not because Paige wasn't playing, but she got May. So I want your opinion here on, whether or not you think Paige has it locked right now, and whether you think that, Sonia and Kiki kind of have bounced in and out of contention throughout the season.
Yeah, I think Paige has it locked. In a normal year, Sonia Citron would be Rookie of the Year. If you look at like the average Rookie of the Year campaign, she is right up there. The biggest thing with Sonia that's kind of remarkable is that she has like a bigger offensive load now than she did in college. Mm-hmm. And it seems to have only benefited her. And her efficiency is ridiculous. Like I think she scored 15 plus points in like double-digit consecutive games. Yeah. And then she's shooting now like, I was looking at the updated stats this morning. She's 41.7% from 3. Like WNBA guards, and this is true for Paige as well. Like they struggle in their rookie seasons. They do all the time. Like that is, you look at Sabrina Ionescu, you look at Kelsey Plum, you look at even Ryan Howard, who won Rookie of the Year. I did an article about this morning. Like being efficient in your first season in the W is nearly impossible for even the greats. And both of these women, Paige Beckers and Sonia Citron, have been really efficient. So shout out to Sonia. She's had an awesome season, and she's going to get lots of accolades in her career. Obviously was named an all-star as a rookie, so there's no question about that. 15.3 points, 41.3% from three. But to me, the load that Paige has shouldered this season and the amount of big games, and last night kind of perfectly punctuated that. And she's the 5th leading scorer in the WNBA right now. Like, third amongst guards. So I think she has it pretty much locked up. And maybe there was a conversation because Sonia's like really strong play of late, but a game like last night's, I feel like kind of puts her in a different category. So I think she'll probably end up winning unanimously, but it's one of those unanimous ones where I think everybody recognizes that Sonia had a Rookie of the Year campaign. It just wasn't this year. Kind of similar to I felt about Angel Reese last year, where Caitlin Clark was just so ridiculous as a freshman, as a rookie. But Angel had a great season. It was just like that's not a good year to have your rookie campaign when you have somebody else that's kind of putting up these generational numbers.
Yeah, it's true. And I mean, when you think about Sonia Citron in college, she was kind of playing behind for this last year, Hannah Hidalgo and Olivia Miles, I guess for the past 2 years, because Hannah Hidalgo is a sophomore. But yeah, it was just wild to think like, they had that big 3 and it didn't really work out the way that they intended it to those 2 years. But the fact that she was a third option on a college basketball team, when you look at what she's done in her rookie season, is really wild and just kind of speaks to how strong that Notre Dame team was last year. But she's really just like been given the opportunity and kind of just like run with it. And sometimes I think about, because my big thing that I just wrote about this afternoon is how Chicago gave away that pick. And I think that's something that is just like on my mind constantly. I think it's on everybody's mind constantly of like, what could Sonia Citron's career could have looked like if she was in Chicago as opposed to Washington. I don't think personally, like for her, there's much difference. I think she would have taken the opportunity regardless. But when you think about team building and like where these teams would be, I'd be big mad if I were Chicago right now.
Yeah, that looked like not the best trade at the time. And I think Chicago fell into that classic, like, we can win now mode where you really couldn't win now. Like they didn't have nearly enough. And yeah, she certainly has made that trade look even worse than it felt in the moment, just seeing the kind of, I didn't think she was going to put this kind of rookie season together. But she's just been ridiculous. But at the same time, like she's been historically efficient, and then Paige is shooting 47.4% from the field, which is right now substantially better than Sabrina Ionescu, Caitlin Clark, Kelsey Plum. Like, and this is her rookie season. So I think it's just a matter of like they've both been great, but Paige's volume has just been on another level.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we can both agree that Paige Bueckers is our pick for Rookie of the Year. So let's move on to Sixth Player of the Year, where there's kind of like an argument between these two players. I have a specific one that I think I would pick, but yeah, who's your pick or picks for Sixth Player right now?
I'm mulling over a bunch of names right now.
Okay.
And is there a specific for games requirement for Sixth Player of the Year for how many games you've had to play?
I don't think so.
But I think there's a certain level of like you should have played most of your games. So if there was no minimum requirement, I would want Jewell Loyd to be Sixth Player of the Year, because I think that her moving to the bench has been one of the best things that's happened to the Aces. In 11 games, they're 10-1 with her coming off the bench. She's averaging 13.9 points per game, shooting 43% from 3. Like, she has been so awesome. I think it's one of the things that have been lost in the story of like the Aces turnaround is how her coming off the bench has been so huge. And that's kind of like the nature of this award, is like a player thriving in that unique role that maybe they wouldn't as a starter, or maybe, it's really benefiting the teams winning and all that. But it's just been 11 games, but I think she's not in contention really for the award. So the players that I've been looking at is Naz Hillman from the Dream. I think she's just been so consistent. She's played all of her games or most of her games off the bench. So that's like the true kind of nature of this. She's been efficient, averaging 8 points per game. The Dream have been a lot better when she's been on the floor as well, which is also one of those categories that I think you want to look at. Kennedy Burke has been good. And then the other ones I was thinking, Natasha Heidemann, I feel like in Minnesota has been just such a spark for them. And obviously the way that they've been able to withstand injuries and Napheesa Collier being sidelined, like, is a testament to their depth. And I think that she's one of the players that really embodies that. But this is an award that I have 6 names that I'm still thinking about. So it's going to come down to probably the day the ballots are due. I'm going to crunch all the numbers and think about it more deeply. But yeah, I'm curious to hear who you have.
Yeah, I mean, I also have Naz Hillman up there. I think she's been someone, and I mean, seeing the Dream in person last week, I was there in Vancouver. They played Seattle, and seeing just the way that like Carl Smesko kind of like operates this very deep bench that he has with, he is switching Brianna Jones and Brittany Griner on and off. Brittany Griner came off the bench. Then you have Naz Hillman kind of playing that role as we think, like, just really shows that Smesko really trusts her as that like first person off the bench to provide those backup minutes. And again, Heidemann on Minnesota is a great example of a player that can kind of just play any role that is needed throughout the game from that first player off the bench, whether, Napheesa's out and they need more like points, whether she's coming in for Courtney Williams to kind of play that facilitator a little bit more. But yeah, again, it's an ambiguous one, given the fact that there's no real parameters over like who is a sixth woman there, as well as most improved, which we'll get into now, which is one that has kind of been a big conversation. But the two names on my list that I think it's between is Veronica Burton and Azurá Stevens, who have both been having fantastic seasons. And I think each of them kind of represent a different way you could look at the award, with Azurá Stevens representing you've played a lot of seasons and you're truly just having like a career season this year, and you're improving your stats on like a category by category. And then Veronica Burton is coming from the perspective of, she hasn't played much minutes over the past however many seasons she's played. Now she has this opportunity in Golden State. She's getting the ball in her hands and minutes, and so that has just naturally caused her numbers to go up. And so whether that means she's having a breakout season or most improved season is up for debate. But yeah, I saw you talk about Veronica Burton earlier in the day, so I'm curious like where your parameters kind of lie with that award.
Yeah, I think Azurá is a good candidate, and I went through like the most popular picks and kind of looked at their career stats and what the season has looked like. And she definitely has one of the stronger cases. But to me, Veronica Burton has won this award, and for a couple of reasons. One, Azurá has had statistically some similar seasons to the one she's having right now. She's having a much better year than she had last year. Last year, she shot 39.9% from the field. This year, she's shooting 50.6%. Last year, she averaged 9.6 points. This year, she's averaging 14.4. So, like, she has improved a lot offensively, and I think she has shouldered a bigger role as well. But in her career, she's had 3 seasons where she's averaged double digits before this year, a couple seasons where it was on similar efficiency. So this is her best year yet, but it doesn't stand out to me in the same way as like a player who has had this kind of role for a long time and now she makes this leap. And I think the reverse way you could look at it is, this is kind of like you said, this is kind of what happens when you get a bigger opportunity. And a lot of the players in the Valkyries in their own right could be most improved player candidates simply because they were selected in an expansion draft and given a bigger role. Like Kayla Thornton would have been a great candidate for this award as well before she went down with a knee injury, earning an all-star selection when she averaged like 5 points per game last year, But the reason I have Veronica as my pick, one, because I think statistically, if you look at her production this year to last, she has the largest leap of any of these players that are in the mix, just completely different statistical output, 11.7 points per game this year. She's shooting 38.3% from beyond the arc. Last year, she wasn't even a good three-point shooter for most of her career. Obviously, she was out of the league at some point last year after being waived by the Wings, so everybody kind of knows that story. But when you watch the Valkyries play, to me, she is the engine of everything they do on both ends of the floor, offensively and defensively. And I don't know that anybody else in this mix has that role. Like Stevens has a massive role for the Sparks, but I don't think that she plays the same type of role that Veronica Burton does on both ends. And some of it's the nature of like being a point guard, but I don't know. I think that, and then on top of just like how many massive games she's has as of late, like it feels like she kind of solidified the award with those games as well. A 30-point game recently. She has 3 games this season where she's had 10 assists and 0 turnovers, which is the most ever in WNBA history. So she's kind of like, upping the heat right now as the time is right. And with the award competition heating up, her play has as well.
Yeah. All right. We have 3 more major awards to talk about, but we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Defensive Player of the Year, Coach of the Year, and MVP. So stay tuned. This is Locked On Women's Basketball. All right, we are back. My name is Chelsea Leite. I'm joined by Noah Dalzell, and we are talking about WNBA Awards season. We've talked about most of the awards now. We're going to get into the big ones, if you could call them that. So let's start with Defensive Player of the Year, which is one that comes with a lot of debate every year, just given the fact that there's so many different ways to play defense in this league. And it's an award that is pretty highly contested right now. I think it's, I have a few names. I'm sure you have a few names, but I'm curious who your pick is right now.
I'll start off by saying this is probably the award that I have the most trouble with in general. In the NBA, WNBA, every year this applies because, first of all, it's so hard to compare perimeter defenders to rim protectors. Second of all, there's the question of, does your team have to be one of the best defensive teams in the league for you to be in the conversation? Because in that case, really only a few teams are eligible, I guess. I like to think of it like where I land on it right now. And again, my award vote is not final for this one either, but I do think you want to be one of the best defensive teams in the league, and that does benefit like rim protectors more so than an elite perimeter player who might, individually really play great defense, but maybe their team defense is not as great. So Minnesota has been the best defensive team in the league this year. Their defensive rating is a 96.1. And I lean right now Alana Smith, which is not what I would have thought heading into the season. And it's kind of a tough case because Napheesa Collier was Defensive Player of the Year last year on that same team. So it's almost like, who are you giving the credit to for this team's defensive abilities? And the reality is it's like a bunch of players, not just one. But the fact that Minnesota has been able to be so effective in Napheesa's absence and continue, I think they've rattled off like 6 straight wins. It kind of points to like what they have outside of her as well. And I think this award is a great way to reward somebody that has been really critical and kind of flown under the radar and hasn't been named an all-star and all of that. And I've heard, her own coaches, her own teammates start to make that case that she is a Defensive Player of the Year this year. So she's up there for me. Gabby Williams is somebody that I voted for as one of my 5 all-stars for guard players, which was, I think I was probably the only person that did that because I think that her defense is honestly so underrated. And we're talking about a player's impact. She is the definition of a player that does it on both ends. So she's in the mix as well, but Seattle's defense hasn't, they have the 4th best defense. So it's not like they're not a good defensive team, but I feel like somebody in Minnesota deserves it just for how much more dominant that team's defense has been. And Napheesa, obviously coming off of that award last year, also in the conversation, but she's going to be penalized for her absences on all categories, which is unfortunate for her injury. And I also think that if she wins MVP, it's unusual to kind of like give somebody the MVP award and the Defensive Player of the Year award, although it has happened and it should happen, but I think it's just one of those things that just doesn't often happen. But those are the 3 names that I guess that I'm mulling over.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to Coach of the Year, which I think is another one that is really hard because it's like, do you pick someone who's coaching really well or someone who's winning? And so I've heard a few names bounced around. I know a lot of people are benefiting Natalie Nakase for the way that she's been able to take this kind of like group of people in Golden State and, coach them to a position that nobody really thought the Valkyries would get this season. So that's why Nakase is up there for me. But also Cheryl Reeve, the fact that she's able to coach this team to the point where they are 6.5 games higher than any other team below them. I think it's like them and then New York, and there's a 6.5 game lead in between that, which is big in this league. So Cheryl's obviously up there, as she always is for me. But curious what your thoughts are on Coach of the Year.
Those are the 2 I have too right now.
Nice.
It's one of those things where it's like, I think Cheryl's probably the best coach in the WNBA. Like she's shown that through different eras, through different players, she's coached the Olympics. Like her resume kind of speaks for herself. And so those kinds of coaches sometimes get overlooked. And I think right now, what you said about the Lynx, their dominance this regular season, like people forget nobody ever thought this was a super team until they made that finals run last year. Like I think they kind of flew under the radar until they were in that position. And the fact that they're winning now with Napheesa sideline and she is the hub of what they do on both ends, I do think it's a huge testament to her coaching and to a lot of other things, including, Alana Smith defensively, their bench, Dejanay Carrington trade. Like there's a lot of good things that organization has done. But I still lean Natalie Nakase because that Golden State Valkyries team, like I have to say, a lot of us in the media were criticizing a lot of how this roster looked heading into the year. And they didn't have any stars. They didn't have any big names. They've had so many injuries. Their one all-star went down and they continue to find a way, not just to win games, but to be in every game and to be competitive. And it feels like she's just getting the absolute most out of the roster that she has. So A part of me is like, this is like
yeah.
a huge credit to the front office too, but
Yeah.
it's those two are in the lead for me right now.
Yeah, I will be the first to sign the apology letter to Natalie Nakase for what I was saying before the season because, yeah, she's just had an incredible season. But we have to talk lastly about the biggest race of all, which is MVP. And obviously, I think it's down to two players, Napheesa Collier and A'ja Wilson. There's so much. I mean, this is the reason I don't want to vote because I'm like, I could not pick. Like the amount of time I would have to take to go through each of these players' seasons and truly make a pick is just beyond. Because you think about how A'ja has just really like without A'ja, the Aces aren't a playoff team this season. Without Fee, are the Lynx, as good as they are? It's so hard. And so I'm curious how you're approaching this decision, maybe the biggest vote of the year.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna add one more name in there. Alyssa Thomas, I think, is in the conversation
true. Of
as
course,
well.
yeah.
And she's an interesting case because her scoring doesn't never rivals Napheesa and A'ja, who currently are the two leading scorers in the WNBA. But if you look at her stat line that she has right now, I mean, this is probably the best year of her career, and she's been in the MVP conversation. She's averaging 16 points, 9 assists per game. That leads the W, 8.6 rebounds, and the Mercury are the third best team in the league, or the fourth best team right now, tied.
Fourth, yeah.
So those are my three names that I've been kind of mulling over. I don't think anybody else is really in the conversation. Although, honestly, seeing the way the Liberty have struggled with that Brianna Stewart, I was like, is she making a case by default? But I think her output hasn't been, at the same level of those two. But it's tough. I always wonder, like, when a player goes down and their team continues to play well, like, do you really penalize the team for being functional and like having a system in place and, Collier's leadership maybe it has something to do with the fact that they don't rely on her to like save them all the time. But at the same time, then you see what A'ja Wilson is doing, kind of willing this team. And I agree with you. Yeah, I don't know where this Aces team would be without her. She probably, if you take a player out, would have the biggest impact of any player in the WNBA. And that could be a case. But at the same time, before she sprained her ankle, I think Napheesa Collier had this award locked down. Best year of her career, doing it on both ends. Her team has been far and away the best team in the league. And so it feels to me like if there's ever going to be a year that she wins it, it's this year. And A'ja's won it 3 times. And so I don't know if she should be penalized for that. But in the NBA, that typically is what happens. If you win the award 3 times, somebody else makes a rivaling case, you win it that year. Like Nikola Jokic could probably win it every year because if you take it out, he probably has the biggest impact on any team in the league. But SGA won last year because he put together an awesome campaign. So I think I lean Napheesa still. But it's not helping her case that Minnesota's been so good without her. It's not helping her case that she's still indefinitely out. So I'll be curious to see if she comes back now and has a strong end of the season. I think the award is hers. But if A'ja continues to play out of her mind, then it's going to come down to the wire.
Yeah, it's pretty wild how A'ja playing out of her mind is just kind of like normal now, like just how she plays, which is what. And I mean, Napheesa Collier, sometimes I watch and I'm like, how is this possible? So she's also been playing out of her mind, but like, yeah, it's definitely one of the hardest decisions. I think a few years ago we would have said that, but I think this year definitely rivals that for the hardest MVP vote of, the last, 5-10 years. So yeah, I mean, very interesting to hear some different thoughts. I mean, I think we align on most of them, but it's, also curious to see how things are going to change in the next 2-ish weeks. There's about 10 games left for each team. And so we're getting down to, down to the nitty gritty. But thank you so much for coming on with me today, Noah. If you're listening, make sure to go check out Noah over on SB Nation, where we both write over there, and also on Twitter, where you can find all of her WNBA, but also Boston Celtics thoughts as well. But thank you so much for joining me, Noah.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Always fun to talk awards.
Yeah, right. All right. Thank you for so much for listening to Locked On Women's Basketball. My name is Chelsea Leite, and we will see you next time.